Well, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us again as we continue our conversation with addictions and community and recovery. And so we're so thankful to you guys chiming in on these. We really appreciate that. Today we are joined by Steve, and we have a great conversation topic that we're going to go into today. But before we do, Steve, go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get going.
My name's Steve. I grew up here in recovery, going on 2 years now. So
Right on.
yeah,
Very cool.
it's awesome.
Yeah, we're excited about your perspective in all this, and some of the stuff that you're able to share with us will be really amazing. So, Jabbar, you brought up the idea of service program, if I'm using that right.
Service work, yeah.
Service work. It's funny because we were talking earlier about just the idea of the way it's perceived and the way like the view is. So like as a pastor, I think of service work and I'm thinking of community service. I'm thinking somebody needs to do a project or somebody needs to get some hours cataloged. Because that's usually what I get called for. And so, but that kind of that two-dimensional, like that's all I see it as, kind of hinders. Whereas for people in recovery, there's probably a lot more detail that has to be planned out, thought about, or even faced. I don't know. So kind of go ahead and lead us off in this as we talk about service work and all that.
Well, I mean, service work is definitely could be service or I don't know. It's weird because when I said that to you, I was thinking, oh, he's gonna think I mean like he's up on the podium doing service.
Do that.
You know,
not quite.
But,
no.
So service work, it's not like it's a whole detailed thing. It's more of an action that we as addicts need to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't know exactly how to say that, but so the reason I started thinking about this was that yesterday I had a conversation with an individual who is their service work
Mm-hmm.
is way beyond where I guess imagined what service work would be.
Okay.
You know, they are trying to change the world, which is a good thing, you know, and they're doing it their own part of it, you know what I mean? And so it made me, so when we were having that conversation, I started thinking, well, geez, you know, what is my service work? And I realized that this here is my service work.
Mm-hmm.
And for different people, it's different things, you know. When you come into the program in the beginning, a lot of times they'll ask you to like make coffee or run meetings, or they used to have you greet at the door, you know, like those little things were service work. And it baffled me for a long time, you know, okay, well, what is the purpose of this, you know, other than to make me do something I don't want
Right.
I don't want to do.
You want to avoid it.
And the truth is that as time went on for me, I realized that service work was some of the how do I say it, was kind of that thing that catapulted me into my spiritual stuff. And you know, I imagine somebody's like, what, you know, I mean, because you're going from what you're doing, making coffee, to suddenly you're in some spiritual spot, you know. Well, I don't know if I can explain the you know the transition to
processing,
that.
Yeah.
But for me, when I started doing service work, at first it was because my sponsor said you got to do some service work.
Right. The requirement was the first.
Right. You have to do
step
something,
one. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that, you know, his mindset was already into that spiritual part. So he was just telling me this is, you know, something you need to do. And, you know, so I just did it. Well, there was a point when that transition from me just having to do something to I wanted to do something.
Yeah.
You know, and once it started transitioning to that kind of whole idea of I wanted to do something, then it somehow it changed inside of me too. You know, I wasn't it wasn't a requirement. It was me doing something to be kind, to be helpful, to um, you know, to make sure that there was this structure
Right.
for the newcomer, you know, so that they understood that, you know, here it's a safe place. This is what we, you know, um, you know, and there's a lot more to that, and I'm assuming down the conversation we'll get more into that. But
one of the things I noticed that you pointed out is like this shift in perspective, right? When you first arrived, it's all about, well, I don't want to do this. It's I've got to do this. I don't want to do this. You know, and it's very much like, because that, again, going that transition from like the addict mindset of like, where's my fulfillment, right? Where's my medication? Where's my situation? Where's my feed, right? And so that whole idea of coming in there, and so that first step saying, okay, we're gonna make this a requirement for you. So hey, guess what? You got to do this.
Yeah,
and it's that first step, because again, it starts out kind of like, yeah, we're forcing.
I don't know that they can require you to do it,
right?
But I think that initially the purpose is that, okay, you have something to do this day,
right?
Which means you have to come in and do it, which means you're going to end up at that meeting,
yeah,
you know, or that function or whatever it is.
Well, and that's what.
So it's that draw for a newcomer to be like, because I know for me, when I got out of addiction, or not got out of, but when I first started in recovery, I didn't know what to do with myself a lot of times, you know, and I don't know if I was scared, but, you know, I was kind of scared about going to meetings and, you know, but yet I knew I shouldn't be sitting at home, and there's a
little gnat flying around here today.
Yeah, it's elusive.
Yes, it is.
But, you know, so I'm imagine that for my sponsor, that was kind of what it was. Is listen, we just need to get you here,
right?
You know, because this is where the magic happens, and it really does. And you know, and so how do we do that?
Well,
let's give you some responsibility,
right?
You know, let's give you something to, and not only that, sometimes it takes your mind off of, you know, the craziness that's going on inside, because you're focused on, okay, you know, how can I best make this coffee, which is kind of a weird example,
right?
But you know what I mean, like how can I best service the meeting by running it, you know, and things like that, and you know, so the initial part of it, I don't know that that when you initially do it, it's more about getting yourself out of yourself.
Well, that kind of well, that's like you know, describing something going from a 2-dimensional object to a 3-dimensional object. Is like how much more multifaceted is that 3-dimensional object versus the 2-dimensional one. You know, because it is, you come in and you know, very very self-centered mindset initially. Well, I don't want to go to this program, so the sponsor's thinking, well, I need to get through the program. So let's give him some responsibilities. You got a job to do now, and that's going to get you coming, because now you have a responsibility. Now you have a job. You have something that you got to do. In the church world, we call that like the buy-in or the ownership, right? So like, you know, I want to have teenagers that they don't just come because they have to come to youth group. It's like, no, what you got ownership. This is yours.
You got a stake in
you have that stake in the game. Like this is part of your ownership. And so on a church side, you got to get creative, because like you got to come up with responsibilities. You got to come up with, it's like on the inside, it's like, okay, great, you have service work, so you're in charge of the coffee, and that coffee becomes your responsibility, quote unquote, your job, your ownership, your buy-in. And so for a lot of times, from the leadership perspective, it's like, man, I got to come up with a role for this person. I got to come up with a job for this. And a lot of that, at least on my end of things, is looking at the individual and catering the buy-in to that individual. Like I'm not gonna have a kid who like hates running the youth cafe and like, oh yeah, you're gonna be a youth cafe, and this kid just drags his feet. He's late every time, just doesn't care for it. But then when it comes to running the media, he's ecstatic. Like, okay, he wants over here, so let's create a position over here where I can put him in that area where he's more. Now he's showing up early. Now he's there every week. Now he's excited. And all I did, I crafted that service project, that service work, or that ownership to that individual, and now it's completely changed his attitude towards everybody else. So that's my perspective.
No, I get it, and see, I guess I can relate that for myself as an addict. That I was that kid who just didn't want to do these certain things. But the point is that I do this for so much time, then I can get to do this.
Right.
At a certain point, that's like the work up towards it. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's that growing in that responsibility.
Like were you required to do any kind of, I know that you run a meeting.
Yeah.
But, was there anything prior to that was?
Yeah, well, early on, I mean, I didn't know how to say no, and I didn't say no.
Right.
Yeah.
Which might be a good thing.
Yeah. So I wanted to save the world right away. So I was, up at the treatment center doing a meeting on Sundays. The chairing the Saturday night meeting wasn't a choice for me. It was just like sponsor and this is you, all right.
Right.
And so by not saying no, I also wasn't working on my program. And for me, everything comes back to balance in my program, and working with so many people in early recovery. While I was in early recovery, I was letting them take a little bit of me with them.
Mm-hmm.
And the statistics show, 1 out of 30 people in that room are maybe going to be serious, and are maybe going to,
2 out of 100, 2% make it.
Yeah.
2 out of 100.
And,
wow.
I was attaching myself to too many of them people. And then when I finally learned how to say no, find my own program, and find my own service work, then I started to feel a little bit better about it, because I didn't realize at the beginning that service work was supposed to make you feel good.
Right.
It was supposed to be part of yourself, part of your own program, and what works for you. And
your attitude about what you were doing was different, right?
Yeah.
So that's, so that's when that feel good kind of comes in. But I'm curious. So, running a meeting, kind of being forced into it, has that changed for you? Now, do you want to run that meeting or enjoy, or at least get something more out of it than what you initially were like, ugh, I got to do this,
Yeah, I do. At the beginning, it was like, all right, so every Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, there goes my night, because I have to be at that meeting. And that put a lot of pressure on me to, okay, I only have certain days during the week. Okay, I only have my son at certain times, but now I have to, make sure I do this. And it finally came to a point where I had to be okay with missing, that meeting. There's going to be plenty of people at that meeting. And, being okay with just not being there if I don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't feel good, then, and it's running my week to do that, then, and I had to step back. I had to, and find my own thing and learn how to say no.
I think that's probably one of those things that happens in recovery, is that we just have a hard time saying no at first. We just want to jump in all, instead of putting our feet in the water, we're in the deep end,
Right.
underwater, like, oh shoot,
Well, and that makes sense, because the need to the need to get clean, the need to stay clean is so like, and then have that mindset, just that euphoric. I'm clean. I'm got to do this. This is how I'm going to do this, and just the, for lack of a better word, the excitement that's going on there. It's, I can see that in order for us to maintain, like it is, I gotta say yes, I gotta say yes because I gotta stay in this place.
I think acceptance.
Yeah.
You want to feel
And,
accepted.
and again, this is multifaceted, which is why the conversation is so good about this. Because it is important, because just as much as getting clean is important, also recognizing like we are still human, like we still have limitations, whether it's energy limitations or scheduling limitations, like there's a lot. And then um part of the expression, sometimes too much of a good thing can be a bad thing if it's in excess.
Yeah.
And that's where it is important to understand, like you say, having like with you, Steve, mentioning that you had to learn to say no. Like that's a big deal. And that's one of those things. Like there are many things, like saying no, like in my perspective, so correct, again, correct me if I need to be, but the idea of saying no is so vital for so many other areas of our lives. Like how do we need to say no, like when, like even in regards to the nature of what addiction is, and when that temptation to indulge arises, how strong is your ability to say no? So it is important to be able to have those, like I need to learn how to do this right. And how even in terms of like service work, hey, you're gonna lead this meeting, you're gonna lead that meeting, next you're leading meetings 6 days out of the week, and you're getting exhausted again. Guess what's looking attractive once more? And but so idea of saying no helps balance, bring a go like balance in all things. And that's an important.
I think I was on the opposite end of that spectrum.
There really is. Well, that's
Like,
right.
I had a hard time saying yes.
What?
Like, I don't know.
Well, that's why I love these conversations, and
Yeah.
when we have Steve, like guys like you guys come in and you're able to bring that perspective, because it does open up how the process of addictions and recovery and the outside perspective are so unique to each individual. Like there's a huge common ground in the process that everyone is facing, and the mindset that it produces, and the nature, how addiction is the same, but yet how, as we as individuals choose to interact with it, how we choose to face it, that's where the scope now is it needs. That's where like the idea of like tailoring it, like, yes, here's, like, we all wear clothes, okay, now we need to tailor it so it fits well to like, we're all covered, we all wearing clothes, but now how do we tailor it to the individual? And that's where, like with service work, is one of those things where we can do the tailoring. Like we all go through the recovery process is important, but now how do we tailor the recovery to the individual and figure out
I
like
think they
that
all kind of fall into their own spot.
yeah.
So for like service work though, it's so I was just trying to get the whole initial idea of what it was. It's like, well, it draws you in, it gives you some responsibility, it forces you in a way, as long as you follow what you're supposed to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because someone could say, hey, look, this is what we have in store for you, this is what we want you to do, and that individual may not want to and decide they're not going to, and that's that's their that's, they can't, they don't have to do anything if they don't
Right.
want to, but the initial is just to kind of draw you in. So what I am really more kind of wanted to get into was that service work is an act that you do out of kindness, from your heart, with no strings attached, with no expectations, you know, and when you get to that point in your recovery, that is a point when uh, I really believe that the spiritual part of your program starts to occur.
Mhm.
Now, is that true for everyone?
Right.
You know, I don't live in everybody else's mind or body, so I
Yeah.
have no idea. But for me, when when it felt like I had to do something, I understood that it was just to make sure that I was a participant in my own recovery,
Right.
right? But when I started participating in my own recovery, um, free willingly, and started to do some of these service work things, it was me doing something and then seeing. It's so hard to explain. You know, when I gave of myself, that returned to me
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt. And I I remember thinking to myself the first time that happened. I remember thinking, well, that was kind of weird. You know, I mean,
Right.
was this really, you know? And then it happened again where I'd done something and then fully returned, you know, with more,
Right.
you know, so it started to kind of pique my whole
Yeah.
interest in what's going on here, you
Well,
know.
so there's a great example of something that happens in ancient Israel in the Bible. It talks about this, that when somebody was in debt, they actually owed somebody something, or whether it was finances or oxen, and they were incapable of paying back that debt. The person would go into servitude to the individual that they were indebted for. It's kind of like a work to pay off your debt program is kind of what it was. It's supposed to be in those days. And so people would become servants. They would become servants in those homes. I'm not using the word slave. I'm using the term servant. They would become a servant in that home, and they would serve there. And then when their debt was paid off, they were released from their contract and their service. They were able to go back home. They were able to do their own thing. They paid off their debt, and that's what they do. There are many times where those that were indebted had such an attachment to those over them that they did not want to leave. And so what would happen? So they are required to go in. They serve there, and then there's like a mental shift where like I'm actually enjoying this. This is great. I don't want to leave this. I love this place. I love this position. I love serving this individual. And then in that moment, they make a choice. Okay, their debt is paid. They're free. Sometimes they would go back home. They return. They would do something else. Their servitude time is up. But for the others, it actually talks about what they do if they wanted to stay. And that's where the servant changes to what is called the bond servant. From now they're bonded to them. Like, I am not going to leave you. I'm with you until the end. And what they would do is they would actually pierce the right ear. They would pierce the ear saying that I'm now indebted to this person. And so they would pierce the ear, and then they would sign a renewal contract where now they are a part of that person's family, and they would still serve that family in that role, but they would not. But so you see that position, that transition shift, where they go from the whole idea of a servant. So they go in, they're required to be in this program, they're required to go over here, they're living there, and then like that perspective change. Like, I get to do this. This is unique. This
So
is
the
amazing.
change in attitude.
Okay. Yeah, there's that attitude.
I was trying to.
You were trying to connect the dots.
Yeah.
But there's an attitude shift where like I'm required to do this to where I want to do this.
Right.
And that idea of service being that key part where I am serving in this role, I am doing this work, I am participating in this, and it's it does start out with this hardship with like I have to. I owe this guy X amount,
Yeah.
but then there's that moment where it's like I enjoy doing that, and again the beneficial part kicks in and the attitude shift occurs, and you're like, okay, this is actually lots of fun. This is amazing that I get to do this. Now, does that mean that's gonna be every single day is gonna be that way? No, there's probably gonna be days where you're like, man, I'm tired. I was up too late last night. I was exhausted.
So how can I apply that what you just said to?
I think I got a little something.
There you go.
When I heard him say that, it's what I apply to is how we need to shy away from the codependency thing in recovery. Like, am I doing this because I want to be loud and proud, and that, pleasing other people makes me feel better?
Right.
But at the same time, if I give too much of that out, if I become dependent
Right.
on that feeling of, like, I'll just go please everybody else so I don't have to work on myself.
Right.
And then those people, I think, get dependent on me to do certain things. And that's when, again, my no had to come in, that actually with the ego thing, I'm not that important in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that stuff can go on without me. But in my head, I had to be there doing it.
Right.
And at a certain point, that became, I was I'm not going to say enslaved, but I was serving them because I thought I had to. And I really didn't. Like, I'd become attached to pleasing other people and trying to save the world that I lost myself.
Well, that's kind of like we were talking last week a little bit. And we could even like kind of merge 2 weeks ago. Yeah, sorry. It felt like last week. It was 2 weeks.
Actually,
It was quick. It was really kind of a quick turn on. But no, we were talking about obsessions and how we can become obsessed with certain things, and the idea of obsessing over others' opinions can become such a huge thing. And even in regards to service work, and you're obsessing over that. I gotta get that. I gotta get that. I gotta get their accolades. I gotta get their approval. I'm gonna live vicariously through their process, instead of saying, okay, I need to do this for myself. I'm gonna commit myself to this process, as opposed to I'm doing it for that. Like, I'm doing it for myself, but there's a kind of catch that a little bit. I feel like I'm struggling with my words there.
So I was actually kind of going for a more simplified, I think, perspective of what you were trying to say. Whereas, so initially when I came into the recovery, I had to come to recovery.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I had hit my rock bottom,
mm-hmm.
or whatever. And so I had to do this.
Right.
And then at a certain point, it changed, and I wanted to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that transition between the two was, I really believe, had to do with service work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds silly, maybe to you guys or whoever's listening, but it kind of correlated with the whole idea of, well, I have to be here to I want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And that transition is what really builds you in being able to say no,
mm-hmm.
and being able to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And be like, you know what, I know I don't have to be there for this person anymore, and so I need to pull back from that,
well,
because now you're taking care of yourself. But
yeah.
I guarantee you, he found something else,
service
work, that he may not even have thought of it as service work, and that's the strange thing about being in recovery, is that service work does not necessarily mean I am making coffee, or I'm doing community service, or I'm doing this or that. Service work can be behind the scenes kinds of things that we do as individuals to contribute to the community that we normally would have not contributed but taken. Because as an addict, for me, I took from the community. I was, I did not give. So now that I'm giving to the community, because it doesn't have to necessarily be in the recovery community, it can be just in the community.
Right.
And so when you're doing that service work and you're doing those kinds of things that are contributing, suddenly you feel a stake in the game,
mm-hmm.
and you're responsible to yourself and to that community, because listen, I put this in, I want to protect this.
Yeah.
So how do I protect this? Well, I continue to be a participant and a contributor.
Well,
and
and
so then the growth, and I'm sorry, I'm trying not to like, but so then the growth within you
Right.
You know, you become responsible. You start to feel better about who you are as a person, because that's important. You know, you start to think of yourself as a positive person, or a, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then that starts to grow into that whole spiritual, because then you start, because once you're opened up to being okay with you, you have this connection to everybody else who's also that way, and
Yeah.
that connection causes you to start to seek something a little more
Yeah.
powerful than who you are as an individual.
Well, that idea of facing yourself, like
Right.
facing yourself and realizing like your limitations, where you're at, and you need to hit that wall where that it causes you to face yourself, and that's where the kind of service comes into play.
Right.
You know, like you mentioned how, you know, you had that idea of like, I'm doing all this because I'm trying to please everybody else, being that people pleaser, right? So I have to be there, because if I'm not there, they're gonna look at me this way.
Yeah.
Right? Very, very real. Like and right there, I have to be there because of that, because they're gonna look at me this way. Versus, I want to be there because of what it does for me,
Right.
and how I'm growing for being there. And so it's like, it's not about how they see me; it's about how I see myself, and like that little that switch that takes place. It's like you're still doing the same thing, but now the process by which you go about it has freed you up. Like before, it was the requirement is, I've got to be there, or they're gonna hate me if I'm not. I got to be there, or they're gonna look down at me, or they're going to like the idea of shame starts hitting us, right? Because we're not there. And so that idea then of that switching from caring about what other people are thinking of what you're doing changes to, I'm still doing the same thing, but now it's like, nah, I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this because I'm growing in this.
Yeah, and I know I packaged a lot into that.
Yeah.
You know, to what I was saying, you know, and so somebody who's watching this, or, you know, whatever, you know, there might be a thought process you might have to go through to really understand what I just said. But the one thing that I want you to really kind of understand of what you're saying, is that it's the attitude changing in here,
right,
and in here. You know, it's not just here; it's here too.
Well, the connection between the heart and head.
Because I can think to myself, you know, I want to do this just to be kind.
Right.
But for some reason, just thinking it is not enough. You have to feel that.
Right.
You know, and then that kind of goes into that whole package I was talking about.
It really does.
But, you know, when you make that transition, you may not still do the same service. You know, like you were saying, they want to stay in that household. They may not want to, but they may want to go help somebody else who's in need.
Right.
In that household. And because of that experience, it changed their heart. And so their heart is like, you know what? I would really like to do this for somebody. And, you know, for no good reason, but it is for a good reason. I feel like it's because God puts things on your heart, you know, and He's the one who changes your heart. So you know, and like I said,
there's a whole bunch. Well, that's like that idea of like we talked. There's one episode we talked about transparency and the need for transparency, and that was a tough session to talk through, because it involved us opening up and sharing a few things, and the idea of that transparency, why that is so important, because again, like with service work, it causes our eyes to open to see others that are going through that same thing. Our eyes kind of shift on what our priority becomes, and when we begin to see others going through the same way, like finding somebody else who's having a hard time learning to say no, and it's like, okay, I can help them. I can give them some of the keys that I learned in order to say no, or you know, like the idea of like the idea of like sharing our struggles with each other, and being able to see how we can help one another. Like I see someone else who's going through a season of difficulty. My service work, I recognize somebody else who's having a hard time, and I have the tools to help them. Right, I've got the means to do this, and so
that's
now
service work.
That's service work, because it's that
those tools were given to me
Yes.
you know, from somebody who somebody gave it to them, and in the end, that is what, because our goal,
Right.
you know, my goal is to remain clean
Yeah.
today, tomorrow, and hopefully for the rest of my life.
Each day, that's right.
But in order for me to do that, I had to gain some kind of tools that made it so that it wasn't just me forcing myself to stay clean,
right.
but to transition that into me realizing that I love being clean and I want to stay clean and I'm going to do everything I can to stay clean.
Right.
There's a transition that happens, and I believe that service work is one of those integral things that bridges that.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if you agree with this at all or what I'm saying, but I really see it in those kinds of terms, you know, where you know, I went from, you know, I didn't want to go to prison,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I didn't want to live on the streets, I didn't want to have nothing, I didn't want to starve myself, so I'm gonna do this,
right,
to you know, to I don't want to see anybody else going through that. How can I get them to help them? You know, to do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I completely like the whole let go, let God sort of thing. When I finally let go and quit trying to control that side of my service work,
Right.
I believe you only get so much that you can handle. But
Yeah.
I also got a few key people that look to me, for my experience, definitely on the mental health side. God put someone in my life, same thing, same diagnosis, same everything. I help him, but at the same time, with me helping, with him coming to me, it helps me at the same time. So I
That's
went
the
from
beauty of it all.
I went from hundreds of people that I've given my number out to a few core people
Right.
that really matter, that help me just as much as I help them, and then
not that everyone doesn't matter, just
exactly.
But makes a difference in your life, and that strengthens that whole bond of, you know, and going through addiction together, you know, well, not going through, but going through recovery together. You know, I hear you 100%.
Well,
because you see that there are some people who are just my core.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not because I thought to myself, you know, well, I don't like you or you or you. It's just because those people understood me in a different way.
Well, so get this principle about, like, so in the Gospels, in the Bible, there were multitudes that followed Jesus everywhere he went.
Yes.
Of those multitudes, there were 12 that he specifically. No, let me break that up. There were 70 that were key out of the multitudes. Of those 70, there were 12 that were handpicked.
Mm.
And of those 12, there were 3 that were by Jesus' side all the time. Who did he give all of his energy to? Who did he give the most to? Who did he teach every single moment? It was the 12. More than the multitudes. And so when he sent everybody out, it was the 12. It was like before the multitudes. I mean, he understood the idea, like, we have limited ability in, like, who can impact us, who can we teach, who can we reach. Like, it is about getting those that are closer, and instead of going for the hundreds, go for the few that we can really have a lasting impacting on.
So why did he do that?
Right. Well, because the idea is this. Like, let's see, now we're in the theology. Now we're in my boat.
No. I mean, just in a general term, why would he do that? Why would he speak to 12?
Multiplication. Because if he can duplicate himself efficiently and strategically and like, we're talking living, eating, breathing, like living with, for 3 years, 12 individuals, then when he is gone, those 12 can go and reach their 12. Right. And so you see this multiplication just flaws out. So he doesn't have to get everybody. He can just get a key few, and they will multiply themselves and do all the work as well. And so I love this idea, because one of the things that I love to do, and my experience as well in the church, is I learned more in memorizing the Bible and learning more about the Bible as a Sunday school teacher to 4-year-olds than I did my entire, like, teenage years growing up in the church. I learned more about the Bible teaching it than I ever did going to school to study it. Like, and that is the weirdest. I mean, do I still study it to this day? Yeah, I still study it. I mean, I'm a constant student. But being able to teach someone else and then to be able to learn in the process, it helped me so much more in being able to have that. And so the idea of like, yeah, you got those people that you're reaching, that you're serving, that God's brought to you, that you're able to like, that those strategic individuals that he so was like so wonderfully, that, you know, like you said, like you get to help someone who's got the same diagnosis as you. Like, how cool is that? And then you're helping them, and in the process of them helping them, you find yourself like, oh, look at this new tool I just got. And it was like, it just showed up. It wasn't that anyone came and delivered to me. I was just helping somebody else. And then all of a sudden I discovered, look what else is in my hand. How did this get here? How amazing.
And yes. Okay, so and the kind of the point why I was asking you that is so for me, I have a core group, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Steve happens to be a part of my core group, right? But he's not a part of some of the others' core group, you know, exactly. Right. They hang around or whatever. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we all have this intertwine where we have these groups, right? So what happens is that me and him relate, let's say.
Yeah.
Which we do, but we relate, right?
Right.
We learn from each other. And then the people that he's not necessarily part of in my group, I relate that to them.
Right.
Through my actions, my words, what I learned, whatever. He does the same thing. And so then it continues on. So what happens is that those tools get passed around,
mm-hmm.
you know, and the reason they get passed around is because we have a tendency, because for me, service work is not just about doing something in specific, but it can also be about working through something with somebody else.
Yes.
And so that's where that service work to me makes sense, is
yep.
that so it just kind of keeps that whole process moving, you know. And the guy who started this whole program probably had the same idea that I thought I got from Steve, but he had gotten it from somebody else. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, absolutely. So like, I'll give you like my perspective here as well, just so you guys, sure. So like, you can see how this starts. So, I'm going to talk about the structure of the church.
Okay.
So, because you'll pick up on this. So I'm the lead pastor.
What?
Yeah. Right. Whoa. Who did
when did this happen?
But
we're gonna have to talk.
But even then, like, I can't do everything. So the youth ministry, our kids ministry, our adults, our diabetes support group, our, you know, the addictions conversations, even like we're doing a kitchen project, so we're remodeling our kitchen, right? So all of and that's just a few things. There's a lot of people that, like, you know, there's the rumor pastor only works on Sundays. How I wish that was true sometimes. That would be a whole lot easier. But so there's so many different spin plates that if I'm going to lead effectively and make an impact in this community, I will run myself to an early grave trying to do it all.
Right.
So I can't do it all. But I know who I can tap to do certain areas. So who's going to minister to our kids? That way I don't need to be in there with them. Who's going to teach this Wednesday night class so that I don't have to be with the Wednesday night class? Who can I tap to help me with the teenagers over here? Who can I tap over there to this? Who can help me with the kitchen project? And so I have all these. Am I going through every single group personally? No, but I have individuals that I am working with to make it much more efficient, as opposed to me having to do it all.
Moving parts.
And so
together.
So that's what I do. And so now, do I lead the whole church? So I talk on Sunday mornings to the entire group? Absolutely. But to make sure that everyone gets what they need, I've got to trust the service to other individuals, you know. And so I do have to trust that and give them ownership and opportunity to run. Give them that ability to be a part of the service, and then allow them to influence others as well, and just kind of get all those multitudes happening all over the place. and that multi-structure, that idea of, you know, I'm going to reach this, but then I can't reach everybody, so I got to trust somebody else to communicate that to someone else. So, for example,
No, I get it. I get what you're
you
saying.
get it, right?
I do.
But
I think
it's not
for
multi-growth.
I think for me, where I got a little shifty about it is that there's not really a hierarchy in recovery,
Right.
but I get now.
Yeah, that is different.
Right.
It is different.
But
the
the
circles
understanding
of influence.
of trusting others to do, you know, their recovery,
Mhm.
because that's ultimately what ends up happening is that
Right.
my recovery is looked at, and the individual who is looking at it either wants part of it or they don't.
Right.
And if they don't, then they go to you know, the benefit is that there are multiple people
Right.
living in recovery at the same time.
Yes.
So there's not, you know, you're more relatable to some people than
Well, that's like
others.
with
and,
churches.
you know,
Each church is so different.
Yeah.
Music style, preaching style, individual leadership style. We're all different.
Yeah.
Some people are going to connect to this church greater than they'll connect to the other one. Some people
Right.
might connect to the other church
but
way
the
better.
goal, is to
we're all
serve God,
yeah,
right?
We're all serving the Lord
For each church. Well, in recovery, the goal is to be in recovery. So I understand what you were saying. Yes,
this is where the
makes-
wires get fun because like we're all saying the same things, but
Right.
using different language to
Exactly.
get it done.
Like, he's the hierarchy, yes, but
right.
without having people like you with more recovery and attaching myself to people like Jay,
Right.
there would be no way that I could help other
Others.
people as much
Right.
with
You-
just myself.
Well, that's a matter of share and service work.
Well, and knowing like so Bible tells us that we overcome evil, we overcome the obstacles through the sacrifice of Jesus and our testimonies, our journeys, our stories, and what we've been given. And so here's the thing, Jabbar's got a story that I don't have. He's no right. What? You know, but like so like they're like
a lot of stories.
right. Oh my goodness. But like but even then, like there's a people that he can reach more effectively than me. Like, and that's the humbling thing is like there's people that you can reach no matter how much I love them, they're still gonna be like, well, you don't know me, you don't know my life,
Or you don't understand.
you don't understand. You may think you understand, but you
Right.
don't. And so there's a limitation versus someone like you, and you're like, yeah, this is my story. And I'm like, whoa, yeah, I want to talk more to this guy. And so your story and what you were able to overcome actually has more windows of opportunity, more ability to speak to certain individuals than me saying, yeah, this is my little life. This happened. I might take a fence over here and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's different.
But each individual has that,
Right.
You know, it's a relation between the two, and you know, so I kind of want to bring in the whole community part of this because that's what we want from this
Mm-hmm.
is we want the community, that not the addicts or
Right.
the recovery community, but the community who we all live in,
Right.
who may be normal and don't have an understanding.
No such thing as normal.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
normal.
Well, normal to us is that you can go out and have a glass of wine
Right.
and not think about it. Whereas to me, I'm like, what?
Right.
What does that mean? Have
Yeah.
a glass of wine.
Right. Our glass of wine leads to handcuffs and
Right.
things like that.
You know, I
Yeah.
I can't fully comprehend what that means.
Right.
Like, let's go have one drink.
For the record,
One drink.
I never have and never will touch a drink. So
Well,
for the record, for
Right. but
example,
what I'm saying is
Yes.
that somebody who you know can do that, I don't understand it.
right.
You know, because I'm like, why would I want to have a drink? If I'm gonna go have a drink, I want to get, you know, high. or
Well, like what he
drunk
said,
or-
one drink leads to handcuffs. So I was like,
Right.
that's actually really true for a ton of us.
And I know people don't fully understand that idea, but
Yeah.
you know, that's really what it is I do not, like, just like you don't understand why I would want to get drunk, I don't understand why you'd want to have one beer.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you can correlate the two, then maybe you
Right.
get a little better understanding. But the community part of it, so I feel like, so those people who surround me that are not
Right.
alcoholics, addicts, whatever, you know, if they, how do I put that? So if they see that I am not participating in my own recovery, which if you get further enough into your recovery, you'll realize that you're doing service work all the time.
Right.
You know, in some way, shape, or form. You know, your idea of what service work might be, as a pastor, like you said,
Right.
is, you know, community service, or you know, or dueling out. You know, this needs to be done. This needs to be done. This needs to be done. But for me, so just a small example, is Steve gave me a call,
Right.
and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" That was service work. He just did service work
Yeah.
in the
Huge.
program, in recovery, because he took the time out that he didn't need to. You know, he wanted to know where I'm at. Maybe he saw something was going on, or some my vibe was different, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but he showed interest without any kind of expectation. Just wanted to know if I was okay. And generally, if I would say something like, you know, I don't feel great. What can I do? Do you want to come hang out? Should we talk? Blah blah blah. Right.
Right.
Okay. So just to get a general idea of what service work can be in the smallest, you know, obviously there's more, but so for the community outside, like my family or my friends that who are not users or whatever else, if they see that I have fallen away from that kind of stuff, then they need their awareness should be heightened.
Yeah.
You know, because why am I not being my recovery self?
Right.
I don't know how else to put that, but you know, the heightened part of anytime the community that is outside of recovery gets that feeling or that heightened, it's okay to say something.
Right.
It's okay to be like, hey, you know, because guess what, you're doing service work for that person.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. You're
Right. So
service.
it's okay to say, hey, you know, I noticed that you're not acting this, you know, what's going on? You know, are we going somewhere where we don't want to go? How can I help to pull you through this? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the end, addiction and its recovery is not an individual. It is an entire community.
Yeah.
Who reflects on that individual to get their recovery. If that makes any sense.
It does. Well, and so what I love what you pointed out to is, again, that two-dimensional object and how we look at something just two-dimensionally versus a three-dimensional, and how more entailing a three-dimensional thing is. The idea that service work is not just something for those in recovery to do, but that on a communal level, the community also needs to be involved in the service work as well. And it is as simply as loving someone else.
Right.
I'm gonna call up on you. Hey, you're up. How are you doing? And
in this situation, shining the light on because you don't want somebody to go into the dark, right? So you shine the light, you know, and make them aware, because sometimes when I'm falling backwards, I'm not always aware.
Yeah.
You know, I need those people, and generally recovery people will definitely kick recovery people in the ass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but you know, it's okay for the community to do the same thing. You
Right.
don't have to be non-existent in this particular part of somebody's life. You know, if you love them, then participate.
Well, that's like in the Bible, Jesus loved us so much. Yeah, he's ready.
Go ahead.
He's ready. Go ahead, buddy.
I think, like, ultimately, why you guys even do this is you have a certain set of people that will listen to you, that you can help, that he can't reach.
Exactly.
And on the same key, there's people you can't reach that you can, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, the same. So if, like, we all work together, we can help a lot more people than just me going out in the community or you going out, you know?
Right. As a collective.
Yeah, exactly.
You have so much more of a chance of making making a difference in an individual's life, you know, and ultimately, isn't that what it's really all about? Is giving of yourself and and hoping that somebody else will improve from your giving, which is service work, and which is what I was coming to in the first place. Because you know, let me
Right.
tell
Yeah,
you something.
exactly.
Let me tell you something. If I see an individual and I feel like, okay, I gave to them to try and help them through,
Yeah.
and you suddenly see them flourish, God, that's the most beautiful thing in the world.
The-
You know,
there-
it really is. That is giving.
Yeah.
That is me getting back more than I could ever ask for.
I love teaching. I love teaching the Bible. One of my things I was talking to someone in the church earlier this week is I love it when I can see the light go on.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
when the like they get it. Like, oh, you know, not necessarily, they don't necessarily light up, but they like there's this recognition on their face, like,
No,
and they got it. And that's
they
something
do light up.
They do light up. It's a
That's
fun thing.
that's the beauty of it.
It really is.
They really do light up.
Do you remember on Saturday, a certain individual got his key tag, and he talked about it as a pop in recovery of us getting our heads out of our
Yeah.
and how people like Jay can see in me like, oh my God, he gets it.
Right.
You know?
It's a fun thing, and that's like with service is like when we actually get those aha moments, we get those like this, those popping moments. They're amazing. Sorry. Yeah, right.
See, the thing is, though, is if you don't do the service, you're not going to, you know, and if you're forced to do the service, not that you're ever forced, but if it feels like a requirement, you're still not going to probably get, but you might get a little, I guess you could probably get a little bit of that, but it's when you make those decisions for yourself to do that. And that's where the magic really does happen.
Yeah,
it really does, you know, and I'm not, I mean, I would imagine that is a general, or that's like a blanket statement for just anybody in life.
Well, and that is so true. Like, so prior to becoming the lead pastor here, I have over 15 years, well, let's see, 17 years. I've been here. I have about 12 to 13 years of youth ministry experience as a youth pastor. And great years doing that. I love it. But there was one thing that we learned early on is that the teenagers can feel when you're faking it. Like they can tell when you're faking it. They can tell when you're not fully involved, when you're not fully invested in them, when you're just going through the motions and you're just there.
Genuine, yeah.
But they can tell when it's genuine or when you're faking it. They can tell. And so when you're being genuine with them, when you're being real with them, and really being honest and open and actually caring about them for them, those are the ones that, oh my word, they are there. You're their mentor. They are with you. You're changing their lives. The ones that know that you're faking it, they could care less.
It's hard to explain that bond that occurs when there's a genuine interest or a genuine care or concern, you know, for somebody. And so for me, if I were to go into your classes and try and teach the Bible, the kids would be like, okay, you know,
right.
And even though I might be right about what I'm saying or whatever else, but if I go into a meeting and I share something that is important and genuine to me, the person also in that meeting is going to pick that up and be like, wow, you know, I've been feeling this or thinking this, or, you know, and there's a bond of how you can move forward, you know, in this whole process, because that's what it really is. It's the whole thing is a process in life.
It really is.
And so, you know, so I imagine that service work is key and integral to a lot of good.
Yes.
I'll say good in life.
Yeah.
You know, is it required? No, it's not required. I don't have to do nothing if I don't want to. You know, and I'm not saying overdo it and give your whole household and life away.
Right.
You know, that's unhealthy too. And that's kind of what he was talking about with that. Wasn't able to say no, you know, is you start to feel like you just got to give it all away, you know.
Like for me, my first place of ministry, my first place of service, who gets first draw of all my energy, is my family, my home, my wife, my kids. They get first tabs. That's it. Like there, and then they will get that drop. What I have after that goes here. What I have after that goes there, and it goes other places. But that might, and there's a lot of times when there's good things that because I have other things that are more important on the value scale, I've got to say no to. I've got to say no. I had a, I was he did my baby dedication. So this is years ago. But there's a pastor.
What is a baby?
I was a baby dedication. It was many years ago. This was the pastor who did me who dedicated me as an infant, and I was told the story from those who were present. They saw an individual coming into his office, and this individual was in tears. It was a bad day. They needed to talk to the pastor. Well, at that same moment, the pastor also committed to going out and going fishing with his son. And his son was waiting in the foyer in the lobby, waiting to go fishing with his dad. And this individual come with an emergency, and the pastor's like, "Is this something that we can discuss tomorrow? Like, I know it's important. I know it's an emergency, but is this an emergency that needs to be big now, or is this an emergency that we can talk about tomorrow? I've made a promise to my son. Is it okay?" And this individual's like, "Yeah, it can wait till tomorrow." "Okay, thank you so much. We'll have you first thing tomorrow morning. You can come in first thing tomorrow morning, nice and early. Thank you for letting me keep my commitment to my son." And they went fishing. And like that whole idea of being able to tactfully say no in a way where like that idea of like giving those first resources out, and like you're still serving that immediate circle first. You're still serving that one, that priority. And but you're doing it in a way that's like, it's one of those things where you're that balancing out and learning that by learning to say no, you're able to serve the community. You're able to serve others, do service work, if you will, in a different area that is needed in the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it just came kind of boom, something we had to do in treatment. It was like a worksheet with 3 circles, and you like put the most important people in the middle circle, other people on the whatever, and the outside. And I like never, it was like who's more important, but at the same time, like thinking about it as who you put your effort into first. Like if the most important person in my life is my son, and if I blow him off and I'm not there for him, that affects him a lot more than like, not calling Jay one day, or you know what I'm saying, like.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot there, but
Right.
so I know I've said this before, but if I end up back doing drugs, I am useless to everybody else.
Right.
So for me as an individual, the most important thing for me is my recovery.
Right.
And part of my recovery is being available to my recovery family.
Right.
And does that mean I should be blowing off other things? No, not,
Right.
and some things can be dealt with differently at different times and blah, 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 but if I bring it back to the whole idea that, if I go back to using, I'm useless to everybody else.
Right.
Then that has to be my first goal.
Well, and that's the
So
thing too.
for you, your first goal is to make sure that your family core is good.
Right.
My family core is not going to be good if I don't take care of this part of it.
Well,
it just doesn't happen that way.
Well, and that points out like this other thing, like if your family core, like that's what. Now this is where your family core and my family core can have the same importance.
Correct.
But the difference is in like where's our condition.
Right.
Part of you maintaining that family importance, that family core, is their recovery. Mm-hmm. You're no good to them if your recovery is off.
Right. And
so you have to focus on recovery in order for that to be good.
And the reason that I say that is because I want because there's a lot of family members and things like that don't understand, like, why are you going to meetings all the time? Why are you always doing this?
That aren't in our family box.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And so they have this idea that, oh, you're in recovery, you're good. let's get us time, and which is ultimately what we want to do anyhow. We
Right.
want to be bonded with those people that we love, but but don't ever take it personal if you're like, hey, can we go to the movies? And I'm like, you know what? I really kind of need a meeting right now. It's not because I don't want to spend that time. It's not
Right.
because it's because I need to make sure that this part of my life is under control.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's where we come down
for the rest of my life to be okay.
and that's where we were at with the communication and why I think I think we did one episode about communication and why that's such a big deal, because yes, that spot on, that's got to happen, but they also have to understand it. Like the family has to understand why can't I go to the movie theater tonight? Because I need to have a meeting.
How do they understand?
And that's where you need to like that. Just and it's like their understanding and like their understanding versus our this is really sorry how this is gonna sound. Their understanding versus our understanding of their understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yes, I know, right? we what they're actually thinking and considering versus what we assume they're thinking and considering.
Right.
And that's where, yes, we might not know the internal thoughts that are occurring, but the quickest way to clear it up is say, look, I want to be the best for you. Right now, I'm struggling in this area. So in order for me to be the best for you, I need to go to this meeting so I can get the help I need. And so I'm going to do this tonight. You guys have fun at the movie theater, but I'm going to go over here because I have to have this tonight.
So
kind of a rough example.
Yeah, and I mean there is some truth because I don't know that I could ever be the best for anyone, but
growing.
So my mom has asked me, hey, I need some help. Can you come over and do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then was upset, rightfully, because she's the one who bore me and brought me up. It's helped me throughout my entire life.
Right.
Did not understand why I was helping somebody else instead. Not and it should never be looked at as instead. And this is what I mean. So this kind of ties into the whole service work thing, but is I was doing this because I need to participate in my recovery. And in order for me to participate, that means that I'm going to have to let I'm going to let people down. You know what I mean? And they're going to see things in a way where, where it's like, well, you're choosing that over me, and that is not how it is.
Right.
It is definitely not how it is. It is, I am choosing you by choosing myself. And choosing this recovery to be the most important thing, so that I am not, because when I was using what use was I to you then? None, right?
Right.
But in recovery, I have a use to you.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you're using.
Well,
you understand what I'm saying.
I think one of the big things that's for the community side of things is recognizing, whether it's family, friends, and when you do have to go serve others, one, we need to be careful in that relationship. I mean, we can have a whole multitude of relationship, a whole multitude on just like relationship dynamics. But I think what's important though is for the community to understand that for our loved ones that we need to release them to serve. Does that make sense? Like. And it varies. Now this is varies. This is where I want to be really, really careful because
I think it's just a change in the way you think about
it. Well, and it is hard. I mean, okay, so I'm a father to a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 5-year-old. That's the spread of my kids. And so each one, I know, thanks. Life is interesting right now.
Yeah.
Full-blown teenager, preteen young woman, and then a toddler boy who is all boy and all action figures, And so each one I have to approach each differently. But then at the same time, that is me conducting my relationship with them and investing in each one of them. And doing my best to be there for them and be what they need me to be because I am their father. But even then, and this is where it's hard for me to grow and learn, is how is their perception of me and how are they allowing Like they're responsible. Like the relationship is a two-way street, and I can only control my side.
Right.
And there's a point where the other person's going to do their part of the relationship, and you know, with each kid is going to behave so differently. They're going to have different needs, different things, and I've got to balance that out. But for the older and the mature, so I'm not talking about necessarily a relationship with kids. I'm going to talk about relationships with adults. Those are the kinds where the community needs to look at our loved ones, look at the loved ones who are in recovery, and in a sense of expectations, release them to focus on the service part of release them into the recovery process. Expectationally is what I'm trying to get at. You know, hey, you need to be at every single birthday now that you're clean. Well, there's going to be times where that's not going to be a reality. You know, I need you to be at every sporting event. Okay, that's an expectation. That's not going to be a full reality. And so those expectations have got to be adjusted in order for someone to serve. Because again, do I want them clean and healthy, or do I want them at the event and in full blown addiction?
See, you can see it like this. My investment, if I'm fully invested in my recovery, I am fully invested in you.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that because I can be present for you.
Right.
And I can be present to the relationship, and I can
Right.
be involved in everything else.
Yeah.
If I am not fully invested in this, there isn't,
Yeah.
there's probably not going to be the relationship is me calling once in a while and being like, hey, can I get some money from you?
Right.
Or something like that, that's going to be our relationship again. So you want to be, you want people to try and change the thought process on how this, in
well, like
the whole thing is just
Yeah.
it's messy, and there's so many different ways to see things and everything else. So I am just coming from my perspective. So
Yeah.
I want everybody to understand that I'm not telling you how you have to do things, what you have to think, or anything like that. I'm just saying from my perspective, this is kind of how things have worked for me.
Mhm.
And do they still have glitches? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I still
Well,
think
I'm gonna. My garage is a mess right now, for very obvious reasons. Our yard is a wreck because of the tree, and so everything's in the garage, and it's just all. It's gonna be a fun fall when we get to clean out the garage. But the idea is like let's say mom says, hey, I need you to come and I need you to help me clean the garage. I can't do it on my own. I need your help. Oh, well, okay, I'll do my best to be there, but we'll see. And then you don't. I'm at somebody else's house helping them because something came up. I need to help. I'm doing service work. I'm helping somebody else with their issues, whatever. And then you miss the moment to clean the garage with mom. And in that moment, something begins to occur. It's like, instead of being resentful that you were doing something else instead of helping them out, it should be, no, he's clean. He's doing something that needs to be done. My garage can wait. Yeah, and so when I say expectations, what I'm really trying to say is more of like, instead of the expectation being like, well, I'm not getting what I want out of the relationship. It's that expectation from the mature, not from the mature side of things.
There's also this whole idea that we have that if you obligate yourself to something, that you follow through.
Yes.
Because that's healthy for us as well to follow through with our own.
Absolutely.
If I say, hey, I'm going to do this, I do this.
Right.
Why do I do that? Because
that's
the person that I want. I'm looking to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And to have honor his word. Like when in our addiction, active addiction, our word didn't mean anything.
At least.
Yeah. And
no, I understand that.
And I'd moved away. So in my active addiction, when I came back home, it was like, Tasmanian devil, you better have something for me or I'm not going to be there. And then I'm out. And then I moved home and I had to deal with that guilt of not being there because I have to be, my recovery has to come first. But at the same time, now the moments when I am in my family's life, I can do much more and I could be present and I could not be.
Well, you weren't sitting there thinking about getting high.
Yeah.
You were actually in the moment, enjoying it, having the
being present. Being present.
Right.
Like not just like being physically there, but being mentally present. Like being engaged and engaging our kids. There's a whole plague right now of uh, absentee parents, whether it's the mother or the father. But there's absent, and it's not that they're
I think there's a
physically.
whole thing with absentee kids too.
There is, well, it's, yeah.
These
Oh my
stupid
word!
things.
Throw it through the
Anyhow,
window.
I'm sorry.
No, it's true. But that absentee, and so we like, they're present, but they're absent. Like they're physically there, but they're not engaging. They're not mentally. You can ask them a question, and it's kind of, and you go, "Well, did you say something?" And so the idea of like being recovery and like not having your mind consumed or not being high or drunk or whatever it is, and then being able to come into that place and say, "Hey, I'm actually here today," and how much more that's going to speak to our families because we're investing, we're doing the work, we're doing the service to ensure that the being present continues, and make it. And as that's one of those things too, is like, and why it's so important, why the community is so big is, and this is where on the community side of things, why we need to be open about these conversations or be open about our stories as is comfortably possible, is so that we can come to one another and be like, you know what, hey, that is so awesome, look at what they're doing for you. Talking to the child of an addicted parent, or talking to the spouse of someone in recovery. Look at what they're doing for you. Yeah, they're doing these things and they're going to these meetings all the time, and that's fine. But look at what they're fighting for. They're fighting for you. They're fighting for their job now. They're fighting, like, before you weren't fighting for it. They weren't fighting for it. Before they weren't striving for this. Now they are. Now they're fighting an uphill battle to prove themselves to you. They're doing, yes, they're doing it for themselves. Like you're doing the recovery for yourself. Like that is why it's so vital. Like it is about that. But for the families, they need to see it and internalize it. Like, yes, they're doing it for them, but they're also fighting for you because you are a priority to them. They want to be healthy so that they can be there for you. And getting the family to see that can help them change their perspective. I'm like, again, now the service is now on the family side of things. Hey, we noticed you had a hard day yesterday. Is it because of this? And then they can turn around and do acts of service because they begin to see the priority in what's happening. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it made a lot of sense.
So, yeah, it is really good.
Because I mean, like you said, the service work part is integral in my mind. And I might see it differently than a lot of individuals, but to me, that service work was when it went from have to I can and I want to, it changed everything.
Yeah,
And I feel like if someone doesn't do, and again, it doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be boxed into what what everybody thinks is supposed to be service work. But
right.
I think that once they make those choices, that that it kind of expands your world. You start to I don't know. You start to feel connected, and
right.
and that's important beyond anything else.
Exactly. Like Jay and the people that came before me, for me to explain how much I value being accepted, because when I'm out using, I don't have very many friends or blah 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 like that.
Do we really?
And a lot of us feel like we don't belong anywhere, that we'd never fit in, and then for us to bond, like that means so much to me to be accepted, and I don't have to try. All I have to do is be me, and
that's cool.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right.
And that's you doing service work without even thinking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Me being me.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a transition that happens when you're doing that kind of stuff that it changes the whole thought process and everything else. And the main goal to bring up service work is that I believe that the 12 steps are a process to get you to God. Now, is that going to be go over very well with a bunch of other people? No, doesn't matter because this is what I'm talking for me.
Yeah,
But
your
that is the
testimony.
goal. It's my God, I'll
Yeah.
say, because so that service work is just one of the most integral parts of that actually happening
Mhm.
because it's a turning point. And it's a opening. You
Right.
know, you know how like you said, well, when you see the lights go on,
Yeah.
that's what happens when somebody changes from having to wanting to.
Right.
There's a light that goes on in their eyes, and I've seen it happen with many people. I've seen it with this guy. You
Yeah.
know, where else I was like, well, you know,
The steps, the processes still have to occur. The steps still have to
right,
be taken.
right.
But there's more willingness to it.
Yeah, and I get what he's saying. Like most of the first steps, and as you get through the steps, are about finding God, and the last step is to carry that message.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Right.
That's huge. That is so huge. We're gonna conclude right here. It's
Yeah,
already been.
we
This is
went
one of the
long.
longer ones we've done to kind of give you a perspective. Like we try to get these to an hour, but usually
Went
sometimes
quick.
it went really quick. I look up and I'm like, oh man, it's been almost an hour and a half, almost already.
Really?
Oh yeah, we're I think we'll see when I actually get it processed. But anyways, we hope that you enjoyed this conversation and that there's multiple parts of it that really kind of help you understand service work a lot better and maybe even help you understand as far as the community goes. How can you come to those that are in recovery? And for those that watching that are in recovery, be encouraged. And I hope that you your story connects and that you're able to take some of this and grow with it. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.